Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Tito and welcome to a special Halloween episode of Retro Renew. Today, we're going to make a Gengar themed Game Boy Advance using a new Drop In IPS kit, as well as some other awesome products that I'll be getting into in just a moment. This build marks the beginning of a two-part series that I hope will get you into the Halloween spirit. So, like I mentioned, part 1 of this series will feature this custom Game Boy Advance build, while next week's episode, I'll be showcasing something really special that I just can't wait to share with you all. So if you enjoy content like this, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for plenty more retro gaming videos just like this one. Alright, so I don't want to bore you too much with the intro, so let's jump right into things. To start off, I'll be going over all the various parts I'll be using for this custom Game Boy Advance. Then I'll demonstrate how to put it all together, review the features of this build, go over the pros and cons, and of course provide you with my overall thoughts. Alright, so going over the IPS kit first, here we have the actual IPS panel itself. Comparing it to the other drop-in kit I reviewed a little while ago, it is clearly different, and we'll attempt to see if there are any improvements from the previous one. The kit also comes with both the 40 and 32 pin connectors, so this will work with any and all AGB Game Boy Advance motherboards. Now again, this differs from the other drop-in kit I reviewed, which had an integrated touch sensor on the ribbon cable to control the brightness level. This kit, on the other hand, utilizes 2 touch sensors coming from the driver board. Speaking of which, here it is. Oddly, as you can see here, it states that this is the TV version of the kit, when in actuality it isn't. There is a version of this drop-in kit that does have TV out functionality, but this isn't the one I'll be reviewing for this video. Now, theoretically, it could be that both of these kits use the same motherboard, except of course the TV out version obviously will require soldering, defeating the whole purpose of being a drop-in kit. So back to the driver board, here you can see that it has 2 touch sensors. I believe the one with the longer wire is for adjusting the color palettes, while the shorter one is for controlling the brightness level. And the last few things in the kit are a pair of insulating film, an adhesive gasket which I won't be using, some acrylic aligning spacers to keep the IPS panel centered, and some wires which again I will not be using. Now moving on to the shell, I'll be using this custom FunnyPlaying UV printed shell which comes with the buttons, membranes, screws, a custom glass screen lens, and some themed rear stickers. It's literally the full package. It features a really nice UV printing of the Pokemon Gengar, which really fits well with the whole Halloween theme I'm going for. And the last item I'll be using for this build is this LED kit from Natalie the Nerd. She sent this to the channel a little while ago, and I thought it really would work well with this build since the shell I'll be using is translucent and will show off those LEDs quite nicely. Now, if you're interested in picking up either the IPS-ready FunnyPlaying shell or the drop-in IPS kit, Retro Game Repair Shop has provided a 10% discount on all their products, including these, if you use the links down in the video description, as well as the coupon code TITO at checkout. That's TITO. So again, big thank you to Retro Game Repair Shop. And if you like the LED kit, be sure to check out Natalie the Nerd on Instagram. I'll leave a link to her account in the video description below. Alright, so that's everything I'll be using for this build. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, to get this project started, we need to completely remove the motherboard from this donor console since we'll be replacing absolutely everything. Of course, start by removing all the screws so you can lift off the rear shell. Once open, unfasten the screws securing the motherboard. Then delatch the ribbon cable and remove the motherboard from the console. If the motherboard is dirty, now would be a good time to clean the speaker and button contacts with some isopropyl alcohol. Now let's move our attention to the LED kit from Natalie the Nerd. We first need to separate the two pieces by cutting the 3 connecting tabs as shown. Next, let's prep the motherboard by pre-tinning the pads needed for installing the LCD Flex PCBs. Start first with test pad TP9. VDD5 is next for the 5V power, TP2, and lastly this large ground pad. Then place the LED Flex onto the motherboard like so and tack it in place. Then go over each point and add more solder as necessary. And this is what it should look like. Then on the other side, pre-tin test pad TP8 as well as the adjacent ground pad. Then trim down the exposed speaker wires so they are flush with the motherboard and don't interfere with the LED Flex PCB. And just like we did on the other side, tack the LED Flex in place and add more solder as necessary. Next, you need to bridge these pads shown here, and then pre-tin the VCC1 via. On the other side, pre-tin the other VCC pad, and then connect the two with a thin gauge wire such as the 30 gauge that I'm using here. And this is what it should look like. Now moving our attention to the driver board, go ahead and connect the IPS panel as shown. Then flip it over and apply the insulating film. Now that the screen is assembled, we need to begin prepping the shell. Since I'm using the IPS ready FunnyPlaying shell, all I need to do is simply trim off these 6 small tabs. Next, I'm reusing the adhesive foam gasket from the donor Game Boy Advance console and cutting it into 4 pieces and placing them inside the shell as shown. The foam gasket that comes in the original Game Boy Advance shell uses an adhesive that isn't as strong as the one that comes with this kit. Now I'm installing the thick spacer on the bottom of the LCD window and the thinner one on the left-hand side. Next, remove the protective film on the IPS panel and place it into the shell, making sure it is placed right up against both the bottom and left aligning spacers. And this is what it should look like. Next, install the appropriate LCD ribbon cable with the contacts facing down as shown. And then place the other insulating film onto the driver board to help protect against any potential shorts. Awesome, now go ahead and install all your buttons and membranes. I'm using these translucent red ones, which should allow the LED lights to shine right through. Now go ahead and drop in the motherboard. Then install the ribbon cable, and then button up the console. Drop in a couple batteries, insert your favorite game, and you're done. I have to say that this is one spooky GBA. The Gengar shell, an impressive IPS screen, and LEDs make it a Halloween delight. Alright, let's go over the features of this ghoulish Game Boy Advance. Starting with the IPS kit, it has 9 levels of brightness with a fairly impressive range, which you can toggle through by tapping the touch sensor. Additionally, the other touch sensor changes the color palettes. Now, this is a pretty useless feature for the Game Boy Advance, however, it is quite a bit more useful when playing original Game Boy games on the console. Another nice feature is that it retains your settings after turning the system off, which is something that the Cloud Game Store version of the Drop In IPS kit did not do. And lastly, while I wouldn't call this a feature, the IPS panel seems to have better white balance than the other Drop In IPS kit. The Cloud Game Store version had a cooler color temperature, which manifested in the IPS panel by having a bluish tint. The panel in this kit seems to be a bit better, with the white looking more, well, white. Now, with regard to the LED kit, there really isn't too much to speak of. It illuminates when the console is turned on, however, there is an optional controller board you can buy to turn the LEDs on and off whenever you want. as well as adjust their brightness. While I didn't install that controller board, it is available as an option. So those are the primary features of this build. Now let's get into the pros and cons. Starting with the pros, this Drop In IPS kit has quite a few advantages over the previous kit I reviewed from the Cloud Game Store, most of which I already briefly touched upon. While still a good kit, the Cloud Game Store drop-in solution had a fairly dim screen that also exhibited a bluish tint. Additionally, the brightness level would reset each time you turned off the console. This new drop-in kit, however, fixes all those issues. It has a much brighter screen with 9 levels of brightness, and the white balance is much better, and by all intents and purposes, the blue tint is greatly reduced. However, when comparing it to my FunnyPlaying IPS kit that I had reviewed a while ago, it appears that there is still somewhat of a bluish tint. Looking at all three together at roughly the same brightness, you can see that the Cloud Game Store one is the bluest, while the FunnyPlaying one has arguably the cleanest white, and the one I'm reviewing for this video is somewhere right in between. Overall, as far as drop-in kits are concerned, this one is a move in the right direction and currently the best option. Another pro is the brightness. This kit gets quite a bit brighter than the one from Cloud Game Store. Now, while not as bright as the FunnyPlaying kit, in my opinion, the brightness is more than adequate. And lastly, I really like that it remembers your settings after powering the system off. To me, this kit balances ease of installation with a decent set of features, making it a really great package. And at roughly $60, I think it is very competitively priced. Alright, now let's get into the cons, and there are a few minor ones. First, while the IPS panel is a considerable improvement over the previous drop-in IPS kit, it still has a somewhat bluish tint. However, looking at the IPS screen in a vacuum, I think it looks fantastic. It's really only when you compare it to other kits do you actually notice that there is a difference. And really, the only other con I have are the aligning spacers. I really don't like this method of installation alignment since it leaves some room for error. Rather, I think it'd be great if they came with an aligning bracket like some of the 3D printed ones we've seen in the past. If this kit came with a solid aligning bracket, I think it would really be deemed more of a drop-in solution. Anyway, I just think it would be great if these companies could figure out a way to really make it easier to install the LCD panels in a way that keeps them aligned perfectly, but also not requiring you to trim the shell or utilize these annoying adhesive foam gaskets. But I digress. And I think that this kit is an improvement over the prior drop-in solution and is perfect for those who want a solder-free way to get a very good backlit experience for the original Game Boy Advance. Anyway guys, that about does it for part 1 of this 2-part Halloween series. I hope that you found this video useful, and if you have any questions about any of the products I used for this build, let me know down below in the comments. Now next week for part 2, I have something really special in store, so be sure you're subscribed to the channel with the notification bell turned on so that you don't miss out. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps me and the channel out. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, see you all next Thursday.